everybody, and welcome to the stream. Long time no see. Sorry I didn't stream there for a while. I was busy, but I will get back into streaming. I'll be doing the Private Citizen tonight, of course. Well, I didn't do one last week. Well, I did record an episode, but I didn't manage to stream it. But I will be streaming more. I'll be on Friday. Oh, actually, I have to put that on the streaming schedule. On Friday at 7, Halifa is playing Red Dead Online with Jonathan, and they asked me to join, so I'll be streaming that as well. That should be fun. And yeah, I'll need to get back to The Witcher. I need to finish Disco Elysium. There's so much things I need to do. There's so much to do and so little time. But first off, let's get to the issue at hand. Let's record this podcast. Speaking of podcasts, quick disclaimer as usual. Alerts are muted, and I will not be engaging in chat as I usually do because, recording a podcast and the podcast people and everything. Don't want to make it too confusing for those old school podcast people, Anyway, let's get this show on the road. Let's do a quick test here. And zoom in a little bit so we can actually see what's going on. Yes, that looks good. Dumb. That's the thing. That's the thing that happens. Okay. Yeah, you can't hear this, by the way. Sorry, this is only going to my monitor output. Can't really change that. Well, I could change it, but it's very involved and not really worth it for this. For this moment in the stream where I just fucking test this. So I'm not going to edit today. I mean, I could switch it around when I'm edit. Sometimes I do these streams a little bit longer in case you haven't been here before. And then I do, I show people how I edit the show and I do the show notes. But tonight will only be the recording. And then I'm going to, it's probably going to be 2 hours again. Gonna do that, and then I'm gonna radio on to somebody else while I finish the podcast. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hello, Fadi, how are you doing? Hope you are fine and you're having a great day. Right, tonight we're gonna talk about freedom of speech again, because I think it's very important that this show is gonna follow on a little bit from my episode on the problem with facts. I'm gonna ask the question because lots of countries are going with regulating what most politicians call fake news, and I wanna look at what that means for all of us. And the central question will be, what is fake news? And what's the truth? Like, if somebody wants to regulate that you can not say things that are not truthful in some way on the internet, how do they figure that out? So it's going to get metaphysical probably. Thank you. Actually quite busy. I hope your day was good as well. My day was excellent. I was very busy as well, which is why I wasn't streaming. I'm still busy, but I had to just push stuff aside and just ride. Actually, you did manage to get some working on my book done on the I'm writing 2 books, but this is the book on the pandemic, the non-fiction book. I'm going to share details with that on my blog at fab.industries soon. But yeah. Did get some writing done. I had a good day today. Mostly prepared the podcast. Went out early. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Didn't Terry Pratchett propose something similar, regulating poetry? Yeah, isn't that in... God, I don't remember what book that is in. But yes, he, of course, was a very smart man. And, I mean, that's basically the same issue. And, you know, the Soviet Union did that. They did regulate poetry. You know, censorship. And you can just, like, if you wanna see where this gets, we're probably gonna talk about this in the show, but like, I really recommend looking into the history of the Soviet Union, and especially like their approach to like censorship and propaganda is a very helpful learning experience as to why this is not a good idea. Like, even for the people who advocate, like, it's not something you want to do. Anyway, let's get into this. Let's get into the show. Let's start doing this. What button do I want to? I haven't done this in a while. I'm very rusty. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna take this away, and as usual, live feedback is. I'm gonna post this again. Live feedback is appreciated. I just can't, promise I get into everything, but stuff I deem important, I'm gonna talk about on the show. Of course, it's the same, but that way some would like to present it as they're protecting the truth. Yeah, that's by the way, that's my favorite Terry Pratchett book, The Truth. It's very good. Hello, Mode 7. How are you doing? Gonna talk about this in a second. I'm gonna do that on the show. So yeah. No, don't be sorry. Don't. What I'm trying to say is, don't be sorry for saying things in the chat. I want the chat going. I just don't. I just want to explain, while sometimes I don't engage. Anyway, let's. Oh, yes. I hope I remember this. Wait, let me just try something. What is this button for doing this new marking of in Hindenburg, like this new audio marker? No, that's not what I want. That's also not what I like. Oh, it's Control Alt Enter. Control Alt Enter. I hope I'll be able to remember that. I need like little stickers on my key. Control Alt Enter. That's not very. It's not very intuitive, people. Did you miss the chat in last week's recording? Well, yes. Yes and no. It's easier to do. It is easy if you don't have it. It's less distracting, and I can kind of concentrate better, I feel. But on the other end, I like live feedback, and I like people to call me out on stuff, especially if I might be saying something that's completely wrong. I want people to say so. Anyway, let's do this. I think I can do this. I think I can record this podcast. Let's try. See you on the other side. I think I can do it. Private Citizen, your podcast for privacy, civil liberties, all the fun stuff. This is episode 68 for Wednesday, the 5th of May, 2021. Who gets to decide the truth? Okay, I'm gonna do that again. Kind of messed up the title. I messed up the title. The title. That wasn't good. Let's do that again. It's a bit embarrassing. Okay, let's do that again. FFS. Okay. It's always like it's either one take or it's at least 3. Here you go again. Private Citizen, your podcast for privacy, civil liberties, all the fun stuff. This is episode 68 for Wednesday, the 5th of May, 2021. Who gets to decide the truth? Hello everybody, my name is Fab. I'm coming to you live from the sunny, then rainy, then sunny, then rainy, then sunny again city of Düsseldorf in Germany. How are you doing? Nice to have you here. Nice to be gathered together. Sit a while and listen. Grab your favorite beverage. I'm having coffee. Trying desperately to stay awake. I didn't get much sleep. I was woken up this morning rudely with somebody mowing the lawn very loudly. Well, I shouldn't complain, otherwise it would be me mowing the lawn, so kind of cool. Yeah, how are you doing? Again, I'm recording this live on Twitch. As usual, didn't do that for the last episode. I just had like a lot to do. I wasn't streaming much lately. I'm gonna change that again. But hey, here we are again. So we've got live chat, Twitch chat, which is great. Occasional input. We're already getting audio mixing advice, which is difficult because it's a different mix on the stream. But yeah, hey, I appreciate people helping me out here with all kinds of things. And today we're going to talk about, freedom of speech, censorship again, because it's a big topic these days. And I want to look into this a little bit deeper with lots of countries having legislation in that direction. And this is kind of a little bit of a follow-up, or at least the episode is going to refer a lot to a previous episode I did. I'm linking that in the show notes on privatecitizen.press if you want to go there, by the way. I'm just have to look this up. That was episode 64, the problem with facts, because this is kind of what we're going to talk about today is if the government, this goes for my government, your government, wherever you're listening to this probably applies to you in every kind of Western society right now. If the government wants to decide what is true and what can be published on the, if the government wants to decide that, like, in certain arenas only like true things can be published on the internet, which these days means publishing it in general, who decides what is true and what's the inherent problem with that? That's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, I have a few things I want to mention. First of all, if you're listening to this on the No Agenda stream, then welcome, because I recently found out that I am apparently the Private Citizens being played on the No Agenda stream, which is a huge honor to me. So a listener sent me this.
Coming up next on noagendastream.com, The Private Citizen. I don't think I've ever heard that show. Stick around for that.
That was No Agenda episode 1342. This info doesn't. I haven't listened to that episode yet, but I will. Not only because of that I mentioned, but I can't, I like No Agenda. I mention it a lot because, this podcast has the value for value model, and that originated on No Agenda. So obviously, that is very important to us here. And it kind of fits as well, because, one thing I think this show and No Agenda have in common is a kind of transparent ethos. Why can't I say the word ethos? Yeah, that thing. And we're basically, the idea is, hey, we are presenting this. This is obviously my opinion. but I'm presenting this to you so that you can think for yourself and form your own opinion, and then have a feedback loop with me. And I'm trying to, like the No Agenda guys do as well, present you with all the links to all the material I'm talking about, so you can look it up for yourself, which is a huge part of No Agenda. So this is a lot of fun. It's really, really great. I'm really happy that they are playing me on the stream, so that's pretty cool. So if you listen to this on the No Agenda stream, welcome. That was a long-winded way of saying that, but hey, I'm just very happy. I'm happy about that. I'm very sad about Dan Kaminski. I wanted to mention Dan Kaminski. I kind of missed this, probably because I was busy. But sadly, Dan Kaminski died recently. If you don't know Dan Kaminski, he was a security researcher. You probably have heard about like this DNS spoofing thing. There was a huge DNS spoofing attack that, basically a vulnerability in the pseudo-random number generation in DNS servers with accompanying like crypto problems that he discovered and got fixed in 2008, and that's where he became kind of famous. Ever since then, he's like commented on all kinds of issues, and he was always kind of like a sane voice in the wilderness, which I appreciate. I appreciate these people, that are. First of all, I really like people who say what they think and they don't hold back. I don't necessarily have to agree with them, I have to say, but I appreciate this kind of, this is my opinion. I'm going to stick with it, and I think Dan Kaminski was one of those guys. So I have huge respect for him for that, and it's kind of sad. So he had diabetes. He died of complications of diabetes apparently, which is a big problem, and very sad. And he was way too young. Like I think he was doing a lot of shit. And we probably lost a lot of good input from him. So that's kind of sad. But then I want to turn the corner before we get into the topic. This is all like kind of housekeeping, but I want to turn the corner to something very happy that happened to me. So Mode7, who currently is also in Twitch chat, I don't know, we're talking about hats on on the stream. I think after I'd recorded the Private Citizen or something, because I have this Twitch redemption where you can like make me switch hats. And I was talking about cowboy hats, and I think somebody asked if I had a Stetson, and I said no. Well, I have a Stetson, but it's like kind of a trilby. I didn't have a Stetson from the US. And Mode7, who happens to live in the US, said, I'm gonna, if you want, we can organize. I can send you one. And he actually did. He sent me a Stetson over from Oregon. So I now own a made in Texas, Garland, Texas, Stetson Open Road 6X model in Silver Belly, which is a beautiful hat. I didn't have a Silver Belly hat because Silver Belly is like, in case you're obviously not watching this, you're listening to the podcast. Silver Belly is kind of like white, cream white color. It's like basically the felt color before it gets dyed. And LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, was very famous for wearing a Silver Belly Open Road Stetson. And I love this hat's amazing. So I picked it up yesterday. I steamed it a little bit because I have a very big hat, and this is size 61, so American 758. I think it's pretty much the biggest size they make this hat in. But it has this cattleman crease, and that's it's not a very tall crown, so you have to like steam in this. I have to steam in these little dimples, so my big head fits in the hat. And it turned out really well. And I was out today. I was in the park collecting earthworms, actually, because my wife and me are we need earthworms. We're making this compost thing anyway. So I was at the creek in the park digging up earthworms, and it was kind of I went there today because it's been raining on and off. And it's like really good, after rain, they come out and you can catch earthworms. And then on the way back, I actually got into a pretty severe hailstorm with big hail, like big hail. And a lot of people were hurt by that were walking out, but I wasn't because I'm wearing a Stetson. And I mean, this is like really high quality fur felt. And I specified, I said, if you send me the 6X, they have the same model in like a dress hat quality, which is, I think, more expensive because it's more expensive felt, but it's like, it's more flexible. This is like the cowboy hat version, and it's like really hard. So like hail just doesn't, it's like wearing a hard hat. That's amazing. So I love this hat, and I love my listeners. I've been doing podcasts obviously for a long time, 13 years now, and I've never really, I'm doing this because I love doing it. I never made money on it. Everything I make gets like eaten up by hosting. Not to mention all the time I spend on this kind of stuff. But once in a while, with Linux Outlaws back in the day, I got sent a lot of beer by listeners. That was pretty cool. And once in a while, something like this happens. So that makes it all worthwhile. So thanks, Mode 7. I'm very happy about this. Anyway, let's not. I put in case you're listening to the podcast and you don't want to watch the video version, and there's always a link. I'll live stream this on Twitch, which is a video streaming service, and then I put it on YouTube. But if you don't want that, if you go to privatecitizen.press, I put a picture in the show notes of the hat, just so people know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think that's all the housekeeping. I think we can actually go into our topic for the day here. And Mode 7 is chiming in, says, looks great, and I'm welcome. Y'all. Thank you again. Actually got here really quick, like from fucking Oregon. Anyway, yes. So today, I want to talk about fake news again, and propaganda and censorship and all that jazz. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I'm a journalist, and the important thing about what I'm doing here is I'm trying to give you information, and obviously, sometimes this information is controversial because I'm trying to give you information that you do not get if you just watch TV news, or if you're reading, the New York Times or Der Spiegel or stuff like that. And I see that being under attack. And the reason for that is that lots of countries are proposing to have laws against what most people these days call fake news. So I put a link in the show notes to Pointer, which is like it's like a J school. I think it's like a journalism. They write a lot about media and journalism stuff, and they compile a list of legislation and actions that governments are taking against online misinformation. And then you can see that it's a topic all over the world. It's like in Germany, it's a big thing. I talked about our law against hate speech, which goes kind of in the same direction. Not going to go specifically into that this episode, but basically what I want to discuss is like, what is the truth? Like what is fake news and what is not? And what is hate speech is kind of the same thing. This is like all this is not a mathematical equation where you can say something is true or something is not, or something's hate speech and something is not. It's all based on context, on the people involved. Actually, what we're talking, I have to tell this story. It's great. So great friend of mine, Halifa, who has I watch a lot on Twitch. She streams a lot, and she has a Twitter account. And she had a thing recently where she got suspended on Twitter because she's like me. She's bilingual. I think she's probably trilingual. I think she speaks Danish as well, but she speaks German and English. And she was responding to somebody, a photographer, who'd posted a picture. And Helifa was amazed by the colors in the picture. So she commented on the picture saying, die Farbpalette, exclamation mark. So in the German, she said, the color palette, exclamation mark. And that's probably, if you're an English native speaker, it's probably not something that's intuitive to you. But in German, you can do, to emphasize something, you can just say, it's like saying, oh my God, the colors, right? You would understand. In English, you'd say, somebody posts a picture and you go, oh my God, the colors. Right? In German, you go, die Farbpalette. Now, she responded to somebody. And the German article die, as in the female article, is spelled D-I-E, Delta India Echo, right? And that is, of course, that some Twitter algorithm thought she'd said die, the person I'm replying to, or whatever. And she got flagged, and she got apparently automatically, because the person she was replying to obviously understood what she was saying. And she got banned, I think for 12 hours on Twitter. And she deleted the tweet, thinking that would help, but it didn't. She still got, suspended. And that is what is happening right now. That happens when you let an algorithm decide if something is hate speech or not. Also, another story, something I blogged about on my blog in German recently, is a German story, but I'm quickly gonna try to make it. So Heinrich Heine is a very famous German poet. He was he went to Bonn University with Karl Marx. He was also a journalist, and he was kind of a little bit influenced by Marx. He was kind of left, and he was his writings got kind of censored in the Deutsche Bund. So this is like before Bismarck created Germany, the German Empire. But he said something. He was famous for like aphorisms and just witty comments. A lot of them got published after he was dead. They were just lying around on his desk, scrawled onto paper. And he said a thing about the Germans, the German citizens kind of being like slaves, in that they listen to their master, even though they're not threatened by violence. Not even like the master doesn't even have to look at them. They just do whatever they're supposed to do. And it's a witty comment on the German disposition, which a lot of people think is true, and especially today, these days, very, very, very topical. And somebody posted this, just a private citizen like us posted this on Facebook as a comment on the current situation, and it got flagged for hate speech. Well, because it says something about slaves in there. Now the problem is that Heinrich Heine was because his writings were banned. He was basically driven from Germany. He lived in exile in Paris, and later when he was dead, like the Nazis really didn't they took his statues down. They actually didn't really ban his writings until 42 or something. But he was, because he was a Jew. I mean, that's why the Nazis didn't like him. But he's one of the most, it's Goethe, Lessing, Schiller, Heine. That's like the famous, everybody reads. But he was a very, a romantic, from that era. And everybody in school in Germany reads his poems. And he's very well known. I mean, I'm in Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf University is called Heinrich Heine Universität. It's named after him. He's the most famous person ever to be born in Düsseldorf. And it's just you wonder what happened there, right? So I don't think that was an algorithm. I think that was some intern at Facebook or some guy, some pure student whose side job in Bulgaria, whatever. Not to slight any Bulgarians listening, but in some country where they pay people less than in Germany, sitting there and, trying to decide what hate speech is. And that person obviously was too dumb to just pop that sentence into Google, because it would have told them immediately, this is Heinrich Heine. This is obviously not hate speech. It's a well-known aphorism by a very respected German poet, who was a Jew of all things. It's just hilarious. It's just like that's where it's going. But that's apropos of nothing. I just see all of that happening, and I see all this legislation going. Super user says, where to go for the truth? Fabian A. Scherschel, that's me, of course, who ran a newsletter called The Truth. Yes, of course. I called it that out of tongue-in-cheek. I actually renamed it because people didn't understand that. I said that when I founded it, that I named it after the Terry Pratchett book, The Truth, which is very, if you haven't read that, read that. It's probably the best book you can read this year. And he comments, the whole book is basically a comment on the thing we're going to talk about, journalism, and what is the truth, but the problem is, first of all, I've said this a lot, but I think I have to reiterate that we might have new listeners, especially if this is played on the No Agenda stream. It starts with the term fake news. The term fake news is a new term, right? Basically, Trump came up with that. It's been used since Trump. Basically, fake news means, most people these days translate it with misinformation, but essentially it's propaganda. What we're talking about is propaganda. Misinformation, I think, it's not as good a term for it, because I think fake news implies it's intentionally wrong. And misinformation can also, it's a bigger term. It can also be unintentionally wrong. Whereas propaganda is, in itself, it is intentionally wrong or misleading. So I like the term propaganda because everybody knows what that means, generally. And I like it because it's tied to public relations, PR, because the guy, Edward Bernays, who wrote the seminal book on propaganda, also he basically invented our modern understanding of propaganda and of public relations. He was a public relations guy, but basically public relations in politics is propaganda, and it's important to understand this, because historically speaking, if you're taking Germany or the US or anything, if you take a democracy under the rule of law, it was always considered to be the calling of the free press to fight propaganda. And this is, of course, because in many cases, the government is also producing propaganda, because that is what governments do. It is in the interest of the government. The government has to stand up, like every company, a company does PR because they make a product and they think this product is good and I think you should buy this product, which in itself isn't bad. That's what companies do. And they try to get you to buy this product. And that's what PR is. And propaganda is the same for the state. The state creates something, a program, I don't know, kind of social insurance, whatever the state does. The state puts more money into the military or whatever. It needs to tell its citizens why it did that. And the state will, of course, do that and tell you what's in its interest. Right? So states produce propaganda. Now the problem comes in when journalists drop this calling they traditionally have of calling out everybody, calling out the government on misinformation or fake news. And I think this is a problem I've talked about on the show a lot, about journalism and the problems with it these days. I think it's just because, journalists are generally underpaid. They don't have time. They get, the press is the publishing industry is in a situation where they make less money these days. The owners of publishing houses still want to make a profit. They want basically to buy themselves a new sports car every year. So they need to make more money. So they have less revenue. So they cut jobs. They cut people's jobs. And then the people who are there get less pay and have to work more. And because that is happening, journalists tend to be less critical. They just copy down what other journalists write. They get a PR release from a company and they just base a story on that without doing any real research. And the same with the government. Basically they take a PR release from the government. When the government gives a press conference, that is what that is. That's a PR press conference. Right, they're going to tell you their position. And traditionally, as a journalist, you would not believe what the government tells you. You would go do your own research and then, report the things they said that are right and then call them out on the things that you maybe think are not right. The problem is, it's... The problem is they're not doing that anymore because I don't know, they don't have the time. It doesn't really matter, but journalists generally don't do that. It's not so bad, if you're like me, if you're a tech journalist and you see your colleagues just basically believing what believe what Intel says or Nvidia in their press releases or Microsoft. I mean, that's in the end that doesn't hurt society that much. But if you write about politics and you just believe the government, when they give a press conference without even thinking critically about what they're saying and if it might be right or not, then that's a huge problem. That creates huge problems in society. And as if that wasn't enough, that's already a situation that we have. As if that wasn't enough, we now have the government saying there's fake news out there on the internet, and we need to curtail that. So we need basically censorship. It doesn't matter. People go like, okay, if Facebook self-censors, that's not censorship because it's not this. That's not how it works these days, right? It's not the Soviet Union anymore. You don't have a censorship office, and everything that's written has to be submitted to them, and they check it, and then gets published. It works different these days. You as the government pressure companies to do this for you because public discourse is now not happening in the newspaper anymore. Isn't happening in Pravda. Probably pronouncing that wrong. Yevgeny will tell me how to pronounce Pravda. I probably should have looked that up. I'm getting a fake Russian accent now. It's probably Pravda. Can I look this up? I should look this up. Come on. While we're at it, is there IPA on that? Yes. Pravda. Can I? Oh.
Pravda.
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 Thanks Wikipedia. Pravda. It's not Pravda anymore. It's Facebook now. Right? So the public discourse is happening on Facebook. So the government, whatever country you're at, kind of gets Facebook to do it for you. It's kind of like when we had the sorry, I need more coffee or something. It's kind of like when the coronavirus situation started in Germany or like in other countries, but I'm going to take Germany as an example because I live here and I saw it firsthand. And they were kind of saying, okay, we need to force people to wear masks, but we can't have a law that says you have to wear a mask when you're on the street. I mean, they did that. It's not really a law. It's it's local, but whatever. But when it first started, they got private businesses to enforce this on you. So they were basically saying we're going to punish. So because we can't tell a private citizen if you go to the supermarket you have to wear a mask in there. What we're going to do is we're going to say to the supermarket, if you have people in there without masks, we're going to fine you massive amounts of money. Right? So that's how it works these days. In our modern capitalist system, if you want to call it that, that's how it works. That is how this is enforced. So yes, it's censorship. So we basically have, if you think there's fake news out there, and you might be legitimately believing that. Well, I mean, there is fake news. There is propaganda out there. I'm not disputing that. But you might be inclined to believe, yes, maybe we need to curtail certain opinions on the internet. I had discussion on this show with Mike, my good friend Mike, where we discussed journalism, we discussed politics a lot, and he's on the other side of the argument a little bit. He said, I think maybe I have to get him back on. Mike, if you're listening to this, get in contact. But I think I'm not miscategorizing what he's saying or misrepresenting when I say he's a little bit more on the other side of the argument, where he says, yes, in the run-up to the US election, whatever, or the Vote Leave campaign in the UK, there was, shit happening on social networks, and it would probably have been better for society if we curtailed that a little bit. And you can be of the opinion, I don't begrudge anybody that, but what I want you to think about is, if you now get the government, because keep in mind that the press is in large parts not checking, what the government is, or what anybody, really what anybody is, the misinformation they are promoting, right? They're not checking companies' PR statements. They're not checking what the press says, what the government says. So the press is not doing that. Now the government says there's misinformation out there. It's endangering our democracy. You can be of that opinion. We need to have laws to curtail that. We need to have rules for social networks, what people can say and what they can't say. Now, who is going to decide what is fake news, right? Is that going to be like a government office? Who's going to do that? The problem being, if the government now, if we have these laws and the government says, okay, we can now go and say certain things are fake news, they're untrue, and we can make social networks unpublish these. If they give out a press release and they're saying, I don't know, they're justifying a policy and it's wrong. Like what they're saying is wrong, right? And then the press, somebody in the press writes an article, or not even the press, somebody like you, right, who's a producer of the show, who might have a blog, you're writing an article and you're sharing that on Facebook, and then the government says, no, this is not the party line, this is not what we said, get that unpublished. Then you have the government deciding, suppressing what they call misinformation, because it's different information to what they said, and that's the problem. And if you think this is far-fetched, this already happened last year. When the COVID thing hit, we had this not being laws, but we had it. This basically was happening without there being laws. Governments were telling, or actually they weren't actually telling, like Facebook and Google were preemptively removing posts because politicians were threatening that the government would legislate, right? And we're talking about health information, like information about COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that contradicted with WHO let's call it press releases. What they said was the truth. It turned out later that what the WHO said, I personally would think about half the things they said, like in the period about last summer, half the things the WHO said about the SARS-CoV-2 virus, about the pandemic, was wrong. Turned out to be wrong. And you can look this up. I mean, you just have to look up masks, what they thought about masks. Like they said, okay, we don't need masks. Then they said we need masks, and we not need masks only in these circumstances. It doesn't matter what kind of mask you wear. Then they said, oh, you need to wear this kind of medical mask. Like, it was contradicting itself. So it can't all be wrong. Jim says, yeah, let's have another 4-hour show with Mike. I want that. If Mike wants that, anytime. I'm going to do this anytime. Maybe he listens to this and he'll be like, I need to talk to Fab about this. And that's okay, because the WHO is just an organization, right? It's just like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. If the UN, whoever it is, it's an organization. They're going to make mistakes, especially with something like this, where it's like nobody knows. Like, not even the scientists researching this right now. It's a developing story. They don't know. That's not the problem. The WHO getting things wrong is not the problem. Everybody gets things wrong. Talked about the scientific method. Every scientist gets things wrong. It's part of the process. It's not the point. The point is if you go and say that's whatever the WHO says is true and everything else is wrong, and if you make a YouTube video and you contradict the WHO, then we're going to unpublish your video. That is idiotic thinking, right? If the WHO says something and then the foremost expert in the field might disagree, and he might be right, and he might publish, or she might publish a YouTube video, and then they pull her YouTube video because it's not what the WHO said, and we all agreed the WHO has the truth about this. That is the problem. That is what we're talking about. So I think if we, so the problem is once you give somebody the power to decide, is this fake news? Is this real? And then decide you can publish that and you can't publish this. Once you do that, you're opening a huge can of worms where you need somebody to decide this. And you can't. You can't. There's huge areas where it's, it might be gray, where it might depend on context, but there's also things we just don't know. And where you might think you know, but do you really? And that's the first problem. The second problem is if you give the government the ability to decide this, or to have somebody decide this on behalf of the government, then the government will use this to manipulate. They will of course I'm not even saying. I mean, I think they would do it maliciously, but they don't even have to do it maliciously, because let's say you're in a government, right? You're in a government office that's responsible for making sure there's no fake news on the internet, and then the head of your government says something, and somebody says that's wrong. I mean, you're going to side with the head of your government. He's the head of, he or she. You must be right? Otherwise, why would you be working in the government? There's actually you're not in the position to objectively decide this. And the problem is that, that's the other problem. The problem is nobody can objectively decide that. We'll get into this. Or maybe I should discuss this now, because the other, who else are you gonna, you could say, okay, not the government's not gonna do it. Let's have a working group or something. Let's have AI do it, right? Then you run into problems Khalifa did. Or have somebody check who doesn't have a clue, who can't tell a Heinrich Heine quote when it fucking hits him over the head, right? You get all these troubles. Then some smart people said, oh, let's have the journalists decide. They do all the fact checking anyway, right? But the problem is journalists are just people, right? If you're oh, let's have the foremost journalistic institution. So in the US, that would be the New York Times. That's the paper of record, right? In Germany, it would probably be Der Spiegel. Let's have those people check. They're biased, like everybody else, right? And they don't get this shit right either. We know this. They're the same people when this virus came out. They were for weeks talking about it being a DNA virus because they were too fucking lazy to just type the thing into Google and read the first sentence in the fucking Wikipedia article that told you it was an RNA virus. Right? You can't have these people. The New York Times, I talked about this with Mike earlier on earlier shows, where they had a huge list with Trump lies, and they literally called it lies, even though they weren't lies, because they don't know what a lie is, apparently. When they couldn't prove that he said that maliciously. So, he knew that it was false when he said it. Is that a lie? Another example. Joe Biden recently gave a speech. Joe Biden said the storming of I don't know what, I think, actually, yeah, Astral, good point. Der Spiegel, who hired journalists who just fabricated stories. Yes, Der Spiegel, famously causing the worst scandal in German journalistic history with this one guy who just made up stories for years. And they're like, oh, Spiegel always famous for having this they have archivists who do nothing else. They don't even write stories. They just fact check their own writers. They didn't caught it. So yeah. But what I was going to say is we're entering a this is why I'm coughing a lot. We're entering a period in the year now where I'm starting to get hay fever symptoms again. So yeah, if my voice gets rough, like it kind of it's starting. I realize it's while I'm saying this, it's starting now. That is the thing. So please bear with me until like November when it goes away again. Right, I'm gonna try to drink more coffee and make this go away, so it's a more pleasant listening experience for you. But yes, I mean, these people, like, they're not smart. Let's say they're not smarter than me. They're not better than me, right? They might have more people in an office. Right? You could say, yeah, they're Spiegel. They have huge editorial offices, but that would presume that if I just write a story, I can publish it on my blog, right? Nobody's checking that. That would presume that somebody's actually checking their stories, right? That famed archivist, like whatever 100 people they have, would actually like catch things. And they probably catch more. Yeah, I mean, they must catch more things than me when actually nobody's editing my stories. I'm editing my own stories because I have nobody. Fab Industries is a one-person shop. I'd love to have like 10 people checking my stories, but I can't afford that. I can barely live as it is. But it's not necessarily better, and that's the problem. When you go like, why can these people? Why are they trusted to fact check this shit? Right? I mean, they are biased as everybody else. They make mistakes, so you can't like leave it up to them to figure out what's the truth. Anyway, my example I was going to point out: Joe Biden recently gave a speech, his big speech. He talked about the insurrection at the White House, which we also talked about on this podcast. And he said that it was the biggest attack on U.S. democracy since the Civil War, right? Now, I would say that's fake news. If I was the New York Times and if I was compiling a list with lies that Joe Biden said, I would probably put that on the list of lies. But I would never do that because I can't, like, first of all, I don't really think it's a lie per se. Then you can't prove that he knew that it was wrong. So I think that's wrong. If you look at, I'm by far. I mean, I'm wearing the Stetson, which might make it seem like I know anything about U.S. history, but I really don't. It's really not my field when I studied history. So I'm by far from being a specialist, but just having a think on top of my head, what happened since the Civil War? I mean, JFK got killed, assassinated. Somebody shot the sitting president. Wouldn't that be more of an attack? 9/11, they flew a plane in the Pentagon. They tried to fly a plane to the White House. Like, I don't know. And then but like, you can't like decide, is that a lie? Is he misleading? Because you don't know. I mean, Joe Biden is a fucking potato in the brain, right? He can't, like, I have my grandmother's 99. She is like miles better in critical thinking than Joe Biden, right? And you don't know. I don't know. It could be like, is his speechwriter, like, did he do that on purpose? Is he just a fucking millennial who doesn't know history? Who doesn't know who JFK is? Or wasn't alive when 9/11 happened? I don't know. Was he trying to, like, ham it up? We don't know, right? So what are you going to do? Is that misinformation? Is that fake news? See, if you make a law in the US, right, and I think they have draft legislation for this now. They have a bill somewhere. I don't know if that's ever going to be law, but, if you have a law that says, okay, you can't publish, like, political fake news on social media. If that's a statement by the sitting president, is that like, can that even be fake? Can the government make a law that makes it illegal for you to post something the president said? right? Would it by definition not be fake news if the president said it? But like, what about Trump? He was famous for just spewing fake news all over the place. I don't know. It depends on what narrative you're trying to drive, doesn't it? Says Mozart. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly my point. That's what propaganda is, right? And that's exactly why you can't, well, you can, but you shouldn't legislate it. It's dumb. Anyway, I'm going to attempt an analysis here. And I think, I was thinking about this. I do a lot of thinking under the shower. I think I do my best thinking under the shower. My wife gives me a lot of shit for being under the shower a long time. But I think that's because I do thinking there. So I was thinking about what I'm going to say on the show. And I thought, well, before I go into my analysis and tell you why I think this is happening and why it's bad and who should think about what they're doing, I have to give a disclaimer because I'm often attacked, or I wouldn't say attacked. Not really. I get criticized by people who are telling me, you're kind of a right-wing guy, and you're always very aggressive against like left-leaning policies and progressive policies, and you never attack like Trump or whatever, or the right-wing guys. And I have to explain why that is. I don't think I'm actually very right. I think I'm conservative in a traditional sense, but I have many progressive left-leaning opinions, especially if you're from the US, right? I think social health care is the most. I think currently right now, if you want to deal with the pandemic, we should make all healthcare completely state-owned. Like, you shouldn't, in Germany right now, you shouldn't be allowed to make a profit in a hospital. I think that would solve all our problems right now. Like, if you really think the pandemic is the worst thing that's ever going on, just do that. Right? That, I know it has its problems, but I have very left-leaning progressive opinions. I just don't often talk about this, and especially not on the show, because I feel like that is like that viewpoint. Like, in the last 4 years, if you were of the opinion that Trump is an idiot and a bad guy and he should be removed from office, why should I talk about that in my podcast? Everybody's talking about that. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, everybody, Der Spiegel, Die Zeit, Süddeutsche Zeitung, FAZ. It was all over, like, why? I don't understand. I've never understood this. I never understood this tendency of journalists to just copy what everybody else says. Like, what is the point in that? If you're doing an analysis, wouldn't you want to do the analysis? I think it's much more important. I mean, there are many topics where I agree with my mainstream colleagues in the press. Why would I talk about that? I agree with them. Why would I make a podcast episode where I go, I don't know, what would be a topic where I agree with them? Bailout of banks is like a crime. Why are we doing this? Right? Why would I make an episode about that? Was all over, everybody knows. Why would I make an episode about how I don't like big companies not paying taxes? Right? There's enough people talking about this. But when I see something and I think it's important and I don't see it covered in the news, that's when I go, this is where my value comes in as a journalist. I have an opinion that's different, and I think I can tell people about it in hopefully in a little bit entertaining and slightly coherent way, right? That's what I want to do, and that's why I talk about these topics. I don't think I'd have to have a podcast. There were many things about Trump. God, of course the guy is an idiot. I mean, of course he is. There's that's not the point. That's like that. Why? That's not the thing I need to tell people. That was all over the New York Times for 4 years, right? You can get that opinion much better in the New York Times. But when I see those journalists treating one president in one way and then the other candidate or president, now president, in not the same way, and that's where I feel that's where they need to be criticized. That's what I want to spend my time on, right? I want to spend my time as a journalist on the things where maybe I feel a little bit I can make a difference. And that would be where I have a different viewpoint than other people. A viewpoint where I think that's not talked about enough. Like, I don't make a difference if I just parrot what, Tagesschau says every night on the news at 8 o'clock. Why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we have Twitch chat, and I kind of didn't have that last episode, and people are asking me if I missed that, and I missed some of the things. For example, Super User Does says, I wonder what Fab's most conservative opinion is. Well, that's one of these things. That's how do you like define what is conservatism, right? I think these days my most controversial, like what people would probably think is a very conservative and probably almost right wing, would be like, I have come to believe that nation states are a good thing. I've come to believe that it's a good thing that Germany exists and that we are not like completely Europe. I think it's a good thing that there's a Germany and the Netherlands and a Denmark and a France, and that there are differences. I would like the borders to be open. I would like everybody who thinks, Germany, I don't really like how Germany does it, like to be able to move to Denmark or to France, right? I like us all having one currency so I can go into another country and spend my money there. Don't have to like change currencies or whatever. But I do think like nation states are a good thing, and I think they keep like politicians in check. I think it's this balance of power that has developed between nation states is a good thing. I think that would be very controversial. I have other things. I don't know. A traditional conservative opinion would be, I like things that are made like. I like things to be made in Germany. I think, why are we outsourcing to make steel to China? Why are we buying steel from China? We made the best steel for like literally 100 years. Germany, like, we made I'm from the rural area, we made all the steel, so obviously that's my opinion. But I don't think even that today is considered like that. There's a lot of left people, green people who agree with me on that. I think like, produce locally, buy locally. This is one of the things like that was a very conservative thing about Trump, that he was like America first, buy American, right? This is like America, yeehaw. Joe Biden has completely adopted that. Like, that's his thing. Like, in that very speech, he was like talking about how like there's no reason they make like the blades of the wind power plants like in China. We shouldn't be making that in the US. Yes. So I don't know. I mean, we talked about this on the podcast a lot, and Fadi has made this point a lot. It's like that, conservative, left, right. This is all like boxes we put people in. Let's not try to put people into boxes. But basically what I wanted to say with this disclaimer was, when I now go on and talk about progressive left people, that's not like an insult. I am, in many ways, I've certainly grown up as a very left-leaning person, and as a progressive person, I think. But that's like, I almost feel like I'm like old school progressive, old school left. Whereas I don't agree with many of the new things. And this is where my analysis comes in. This is where I see why we have this problem with people trying to legislate this kind of thing. Legislate hate speech, legislate fake news, so to speak. I think if I was to do an analysis of this, I think the problem here is mostly well-meaning and left-leaning progressive people who are well-meaning. They want to make the world a better place, and I believe them that. I know a lot of people like this. They want to make the world a better place, but they don't understand enough. They lack general understanding about issues, right? These are people who are saying, at this very topic, I've talked to people who are like, it's better for the planet or the world or society if like you can't say certain things on Facebook. And then I say, how are you going to do this? How are you going to police this? Right? Or, it's like the same people who are saying like there shouldn't be like copyrighted material like on YouTube. We'll check that before. And I'm like, how do you know how much text is uploaded to Facebook in Germany every second? Germany alone. Like, you can't check that. And then these people are like, yeah, we'll just do it with AI. And I'm like, you don't know what AI, you have literally no idea what you just talked about. You have no idea. You just heard somebody say AI, we can solve it. AI, blockchain, throw in some, I don't know, what's the newest non-fungible, just throw in a few non-fungible tokens and it'll be all good. No, you have no idea what you're talking about. They mean well, but they lack a certain understanding. It's the same problem with, science. They say 98% of all scientists agree. They don't understand how science works. They don't understand that 98% of scientists don't agree. It doesn't mean anything inherently. It doesn't mean anybody's right. But we talked about that before anyway. So I think it's kind of a misguided attempt. And what they're trying to do is they perceive a threat. Right? They perceive a threat. This is all like, I cut this very broadly. So, I mean, when I'm going to, at the end of the show, I'm going to say, I appreciate feedback and all that. I do appreciate feedback, but like, don't understand that I'm like, not like, I just said, don't put people in the boxes. And I really don't want to do that, but I'm trying to explain something. So I need to like paint stuff in broad brushes. So I think broadly speaking, a lot of these people, the politicians who want to do this, they perceive a threat from the right. And I know why. I mean, there is shit, there's misinformation, there's bullshit on Facebook. Of course there is. The people storming that fucking Capitol were fucking idiots. Right? But, like, nobody but those people there thought that was a good idea. Right? And of course you can have of course you can put information on Facebook that will skew people in voting, right? But I don't think that threat is as big as these people think it is. I don't think that misinformation is influencing as much as they think. And I think where it's influencing people where they've always been influenced. I mean, this is kind of people equate this with like the pub, right, where people talk shit, and then that influences people. That's how stupid ideas spread. Like the whole vote leave stuff, that is like something in the 80s that would have spread like in pubs, right? That's just like dumb things, like, oh yeah, the banana laws of the EU, you need to get rid of that, all of this shit. Yes, that's how populism works. That's something that is new. I think these people don't understand the internet. They don't understand new technology, and that's why they overestimate this threat. I mean, generally, very broad brushes. Opportunistic politicians telling dumb people something, that's populism. That's how Hitler got to power. And that's how, like, the Marxist-Leninists, they didn't get into power by that. They got into power by force. But they stayed in power with that. Because people believed them certain things. That's how that's how you manipulate people. That's how a democracy works. Yes, and that's a problem, and that can be a threat. But I don't think it's as big a threat as these people think. And the biggest problem is they perceive this as a huge threat, and then they're going to change some laws. And what I'm seeing is the problem is the laws they are changing are the very laws that prevented the problem they think is a huge problem from being a huge problem. Right? We have these laws. We have civil liberties. We have freedom of speech because we learned out of mistakes in the past. And specifically in Germany, where the Weimar Republic, so in case, there's new listeners here, I've said this a lot of times, you might have not went to school in Germany, some people might not know this. Hitler came to power in a democracy. He was duly elected. Germany had a democracy before the Third Reich, between the Second Reich, Bismarck's Reich, and the Third Reich, there was the Weimar Republic. That's where our current flag colors evolved from, for example. But But that democracy had a problem. That democracy was, we know so much about democracy back in the day, that they had weak laws in certain areas, that the Nazis, once they got into power by just normal, what I just talked about, populism, and they got duly elected, and then they used the laws that were there to suppress free speech and to suppress other parties. And that's how they consolidated power, and that's how they created a dictatorship. And that's why when the Second World War was over and the Germans were saying, hey, let's make a democracy again, with the help of, very smart Germans and, people from the US and people from the UK, we came up with the Constitution, or the Grundgesetz, and that has certain rules, certain restrictions on the government. For example, we are a federal republic. We realized that our previous government system was very centralized, and that made it easier for the Nazis to take over, whereas Germany is a very diverse country in many respects. We have all these different cultures, all these federal states, and spreading power on there makes it harder for the government to centralize and to, maybe convert a democracy into something else we don't want. We're getting rid of that. I mean, this is not part of the free speech stuff. Right now, we're getting rid of it because of the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus pandemic. But we're getting rid of that. And there were very specific free speech law. And we have free speech in Germany is not like in the US. We can't say certain things. You're not allowed to literally use certain symbols, wave certain flags. There's words I could say right now that would be a crime. I could just now do a certain hand gesture and say 2 words, and that would be a crime. That could land me in jail for, I think, up to 4 years. So we don't have complete free speech. We have these rules already. We have hate speech in Germany was defined in 1949. And I think it's still sufficient. That is a very smart definition. So why are we changing it now? Like, what these people are doing, and I'm talking a lot about Germany right now because I know a lot about Germany, but like this is something that's transferable to the US. The same thing's happening in the US, in the UK, in other countries right now. Generally Western influenced countries. So I think these people are well-meaning, and they're trying to prevent a threat that's not as big as they think it is, and they're creating laws that, of course, the current government will never, Merkel's government or whatever, whoever comes next, probably a green government or whatever, they're not gonna abuse this. But like in a democracy, you have to make laws not for the government currently in power, but the worst case government, right? You gotta be thinking, what happens if that threat you perceived of the right telling the people bullshit and, over Facebook, manipulating the election in air quotes that I'm making with my hands, because basically propaganda, they get into power, and then they have all the laws you made, where the government decides what is true and what not. Like, do you want the populists in power with that? Right? In the US, you gotta ask yourself, if you think Trump was a problem, right? And if you want anti-hate speech laws, and you want to curb freedom of speech because you want to prevent another Trump, just imagine what happens if you pass all those laws and they go on the books, and then Trump gets into power. The very guy who popularized the word fake news. Right? Just imagine what happens if his government or a person like him, right, suddenly gets to decide what can be on Facebook or not. Like, why can't these people see that that's a very bad idea? In trying to prevent a threat to democracy, you're creating basically a toolbox that, a legislative toolbox that's like the wet dream of any autocrat. And I think that is because they don't understand the underlying thing. They don't understand the internet. They don't understand that this is just, public discourse now moved to Facebook. Yes, that's it. Right. It's still public discourse. It's different than it was before. Yes, things change. But it's not like so different that suddenly democracy is suddenly in danger. Yes, populists can tell dumb people shit. It's probably a bit more dangerous now than it was before. But really, isn't what you're doing much more dangerous? So in one sentence, you're overestimating a threat, the government takeover from the right, and you're vastly underestimating the destructive consequences of what you are doing, and what that will do to a democratic system under the rule of law, where journalism already doesn't really work. Right. Let's just have a quick look at. Maybe we have some live feedback here. Mode 7 says, I'm a bit tired of everyone thinking we should sanitize all speech. The proponents of it just don't realize how much it is actually working against them. You're saying that distributed power in government is very important. I'd argue that the same could be true for social networks. Facebook doesn't have the central control they currently enjoy. How can the government lean on them to censor people? Yeah, I mean, that is a valid argument. It's a very techie argument, but like if we had distributed social networks, I'm going to do an episode about that. I don't think that's the answer either, but like, yes, that would be very, very difficult. Although, they could still, especially the US government, who has a lot of control over the internet infrastructure, they would have levers to attack that. But yes, I mean, distributed, I think is a very good idea. And then, for example, that's a very unconservative standpoint, right? That's, the traditional conservative thing is you want to centralize power in the hand of one government. Maybe not in the US, because, conservative there is always also a little bit like southern states, and they've always fought against too much federal power. But yeah, I think the problem is there. Like, I think you're right. I think in saying that, people want to sanitize speech. I mean, it's kind of like the problem I was said with hate speech, when you make like laws that are very heavy-handed and influence discourse. Like, what are you defending against? Like, what is the bad part? Like, I realize that I'm in a very, very privileged position. I'm a man, right? I don't get like dick pics sent to me all the time. But I do have female friends, and I see what that is like. Basically, okay. So this is my personal standpoint on this. It's probably gonna ruffle some feathers, but from my position, I can only speak from my position, and I know that I'm more privileged than other people. But I'm like what is happening there? Somebody's saying bad things about you. You can just ignore that. You can nobody is fucking driving to your house and or sending you like shit in a bag or putting like your front lawn on fire, or like throwing bricks to your house through your window. If that happens, yes, that the state needs to come in, and that needs to stop. That's why we have the police. But like, what is the problem with speech? What's the problem with people saying dumb things, saying hurtful things? That happens. I mean, I learned that in school. I did all I'm so not fazed by this kind of stuff, because I was mercilessly bullied in school for like 10 years, basically. I learned as a kid that is just like, you can completely get past that. Like, that's just a mental thing. You can just turn off. You can just go, that guy's an idiot. I'm just gonna completely ignore them or him or whatever. It's always, in my case, it was always other boys. So you can, like, once you learn that, like, that's a skill for life. I just wish like people would learn that, and they would learn to ignore. Like, I know I have female friends who get sent dick pics because they have a semi, popular Twitter account, and they get sent dick pics, and they laugh about that all day. They're like, yeah, okay, another dick pic. Like, they're not going, oh my god, it's a penis, I'm scarred for life, I can't sleep tonight. Like, yeah, I mean, it happens. Yes, and they get threatened. I know that, but it's like, you gotta think, like, people say all kinds of shit on the internet. They're not gonna come and kill you if they say they're gonna, like, if they tell you on Twitter they're gonna come to your house and rape you. They're not gonna do that, right? If they were gonna do that, they wouldn't say that on like it's a scare tactic. And yes, especially if you had experiences with this kind of stuff in the past, I can see how that is traumatic. But like, there has to be another way to deal with that than to go like, we need to we need to outlaw that. And then you see like the fucking legislation these people are drafting, and there's like literally like the fucking German hate speech legislation, the penalties for that are like huge. I mean, there's like in reality, there's not much of a step for like you going on Twitter and like threatening to rape somebody, and you're actually going and raping somebody. The only difference is that in Germany, generally, I think with the hate speech, it would be like a first, like if that was your first criminal infraction, you would not actually get jail time, right? You would get like what we call Bewährung, where you like, basically you're on probation, basically. Whereas if you actually rape somebody, you're not going to get out on probation. But like the realistic, like how many years in prison you get are like weirdly close. Like I don't understand that. Like it's weird. Mode 7 says, I think hate speech is a stupid thing to legislate due to the nature of speech itself. Yeah, it's very hard. Like the traditional German, like even our constitution-based like hate speech thing works because it's like a historic thing, right? So it's very clearly defined. It's clear symbols you're not allowed to use and stuff like that. I was never a fan of that, but that's at least like understandable, and it's like clearly defined in law. It's not like we're gonna have like even a judge decide if that was like hate speech, and we don't really have any precedent for that. It's like you could if you have, it's probably not an experience everybody has, but like, you know, if you're guys and you're friends and you're drinking and you're alone, right? You're saying things to each other that if you put them on Twitter, they would now qualify as hate speech and get you thrown in jail, right? Or like speech. Okay, if you're listening with kids on this in the car, turn this off, because, you know, I swear a bit, but this is some people are gonna get offended by this. But the word cunt, for example, in the US is a very, very bad swear word. If you call somebody a cunt, it's gonna be like really bad. In the UK, it's bad. It's not that bad. In Australia, there are places in Australia where literally saying, "Hey, you cunt," is it's just saying hello. I mean, I follow a Twitch streamer from Australia whose sub alert, when you subscribe to his channel, is somebody saying, or him saying, "Oh, welcome, you cunt," because that, you know, in that cultural area, that's just it's just a different understanding of the word. And I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all, because I studied linguistics, and if you do linguistics for even one semester, you learn like register and stuff like that, right? You learn what this is about linguistically. But the people who make these laws apparently have never heard of that. Like they never asked some like linguistic professor, like, how are we gonna decide like if this is like an actual really bad swear word? The guy might have just been from Australia. But he must just be visiting from Australia and go, "Hey, you cunt!" No, that's hate speech. You're going to jail. You, my friend, are going right into the slammer. Yeah, it's very, very, very weird. So Mod 7 says new slang will be created to skirt the current hate speech. Yeah, actually, I heard a term recently that I'd never heard about, but this is a great term. It's like, what was that? Oh God, the derogatory treadmill, which is something that's a phenomenon, and I think it's very true. It's like as society, there's a word, and society decides this is a really bad word, right? And then they let's I think on the podcast they were talking about the word retard, right? Which these days is hate speech. If I call somebody on Twitter retard, it's hate speech. It used to be a medical term. Mentally retarded used to be the politically correct medical term for the condition, right? And then I think, children in school were like, oh, somebody not, mentally retarded. And they start calling other kids like, you're a retard. And then that became a swear word, and that became socially unacceptable. And then there's a new term and then that is deemed like you can't say that. And then you have a new, I don't actually know in the example what like the next term was, but it's like, then you have like mentally handicapped or something, right? And then you like, oh, you're handicapped or whatever. And then that becomes a swear word. And then society needs to develop another, and it's like a treadmill. It's like it keeps going. And the funny thing is, it keeps coming around, like, because like the old terms sometimes then they get claimed by like society again, and then they become normal again, or they get a different connotation. It's like the word nigger. If I said that to a black person, it would be a horrible insult. But like it's in rap songs where that's just like, it's like cunt. It's like, hey nigger, if you're in a certain culture, you can say that. But other people can't. Like language is a weird. Like how do you legislate that on a social network? Like, how do you do it without it being incredibly racist? You have to figure, like, was the guy who called the other guy nigger this German guy, white German guy wearing a cowboy hat, or was it actually a black guy in the US? And, like, is this now socially, like, try to write an algorithm for that. It doesn't fucking work. So I mean, we're talking a lot about hate speech right now, but it's absolutely the same thing if you're talking fake news, because you can't, like, you can't figure this kind of, you can't figure out if something is actually, like with some things you can't figure out if something's actually true. Right, you might not know at the point. You might be like our example with the WHO, where currently you think masks don't help, and then you get new research and you suddenly figure like something can't be the truth and later not be the truth, right? The truth means it's true. It's unequivocal. That's why the problem with facts, right? That's why there's so little actual like fucking facts in the world and truths, because we're just observing something and it might change. Things might change. Our understanding of things might change. And then there's stuff that are political truth that are not the truth. For example, Germany used to be a divided country after World War II. We had Eastern Germany, which was called the DDR, Deutsche Demokratische Republik. The GDR, the German Democratic Republic. It had democratic in the name. It wasn't democratic, right? It was a country where there was one political party, and elections were like watched by the state, and they would watch that you turn up, and they would watch that you wrote the right thing. So 98% always voted for the right party, for the one party that was there, right? That's like, it wasn't democratic, but it has had democratic in the title. The government would say it's democratic, right? And I think the problem when I say this is I think this is quintessentially a left problem. And I know it might be different in the US, probably is, or in the UK, but in Germany you have to understand when you especially my age, I'm 37 now, so you grew up in the 80s, and I grew up, my parents were very left. And there's this understanding with, like, intelligent, well-educated Germans who feel like that being right is bad and being left is good, right? If you're talking Der Spiegel, the publisher of Der Spiegel has a very well known column in Der Spiegel, which is called Im Zweifel links. God, I need to look up what his first name is, because there's two. His Jakob Augstein is his name. So he's the publisher of Der Spiegel. His dad was also the publisher, which is why I get him confused. Anyway, Jakob Augstein has a column called Im Zweifel links, if in doubt, left. And this always struck me as an incredibly dumb. I mean, it's a good title, but it's incredibly. It's like, and it's incredibly. It's an incredible dumb maxim, and it's like a motto, and it is basically what a lot of people think. A lot of well-educated Germans in a certain, affluent people. That's how they think, and it is incredibly dumb, because how can you think like, if in doubt, like do the left thing, right? If you're intelligent, you go, if in doubt, research, right? If there's a political decision, and you're in a democracy and you're voting, and you don't know what to vote, you don't know, do I vote the right party or the left party? You don't go like, in doubt, vote the left. Like, a lot of people do that, especially in Germany, but that's incredibly dumb. You don't do that. You go, how about I figure out that issue? If you're really intelligent, you're like, how about I get if you listen to the show, how about I get my own fucking opinion, right? And the problem is, there's this feeling, because of the history of Germany and obviously the horrible, horrible things that happened under the Nazis, and happened from the right, that the right is horrible, and it is generally horrible. But that doesn't mean the left, like the far right especially, but that doesn't mean that the left is inherently good. We had 40 years of a divided country. They built a fucking wall. Like, have these people forgotten that the Americans had to drop food in West Berlin, otherwise people would have fucking starved, because there was a fucking regime, a dictatorship in East Germany that built a wall. Speaking of propaganda, they built the wall, and while they were building it, had a press conference saying, this is a very famous quote, niemand hat die Absicht, eine Mauer zu errichten. Nobody is intending to build a wall. They put out that PR statement, the fucking propaganda, while they built the fucking wall. Right? And back then, the press was still doing their job, so the press in West Germany was saying, photo? I think they're building a wall there. No, they had the wall. They shot people who were trying to leave the country. No, the left is not inherently better, right? If you're intelligent, you have to realize that like totalitarianism and like fundamentalism is always bad. It doesn't matter on what side, right? Stalin killed millions of people. Hitler killed millions of people. Like the extremes are always bad, and so this like, I don't know, what do you call it? This instinct to go, well, the left is always better. No, you have to think about that issue. And I think that's inherently, at least in Germany, where this idea comes from, because you see this, these people don't recognize that there's fake news, misinformation, propaganda, whatever you want to call it, on both fucking sides. They just see the fucking right-wing bullshit with like, oh, the fucking immigrants are stealing our jobs. Of course that is idiocy. But the people going, we need socialism in this country because socialism is great, is also idiocy. We had socialism in this country. Didn't fucking work. It was the worst place ever. People wanted to leave so bad they got shot for it at the border. Right? It's not like that is idiotic. So I just the other day, I'm walking like past a traffic light in Germany, and there's like a sticker on there from the Marxist-Leninist Party in Germany, and they're like, oh, we need down with capitalism, we need Marxism, we need Leninism now. And I didn't fucking have a Sharpie. If I had a Sharpie, I would have written under that Stalinism now, because that's the next step, right? Who's gonna vote for the fucking Marxist-Leninist Party? A party that basically came up with the idea that there are classes of people, and some classes of people have to forcibly removed from power. You have to remove everything they have, and if they, you literally have to have a dictatorship, the dictatorship of the proletariat, to remove these people from power. And they went so far with it that they shot these people. Right? As my mother says, Lenin has had some really good ideas. Cracked me up. I was talking with my mother the other week. We were talking about the coronavirus things, the restrictions, and I was like saying this is going too far. But it's like nothing's gonna happen. The only way I see is like people actually marching on the street and doing this. And my mother just like out of nowhere goes like, you know what Lenin said, right? Bevor der Deutsche eine Revolution macht, löst noch eine Bahnsteigkarte. Before the German does a revolution, he has to get a ticket for the train, right? If they're basically saying, if you're going to the city center to have a revolution by train, so you're going to the city center to tell everybody we need to abolish the government and seize the means of production and no private property, he's gonna pay for the train ticket to get there. Right? He's not going to, like in every other country, they're going to fucking seize the train to get to the fucking rally to tell everybody to seize the government. No, the German will, and that is so true. The German will actually get the fucking ticket. They will all pay for the ticket, right? To go to the city center to tell everybody to get rid of capitalism because capitalism is so bad. That's what the Germans are like. Fab's ability to recall direct quotes is mind-blowing. That's the only thing I can do. That's literally that's the only thing I can do. It's my only skill. And like talk 2 hours like this about bullshit. Anyway, that's why I think it's a left problem. I'm not saying like the right people have worse ideas. I don't even want to know what they want to legislate. But the thing is like they're not in the, I wouldn't even say in power. They're not like in the mind space of people right now, right? These ideas from the progressive left-leaning people are actually being discussed. They're actually being evaluated as laws. We're currently not evaluating laws that, we're closing the border. We actually are. We have closed the border. Anyway, not about immigrants. That's what I'm saying. Right. And so, to me, the problem, as I said before, the problem is if you just look back at history and like just think about like who is afraid of free speech, right? Is it the people who are right and are fighting for a just cause, or is it the people who probably have done horrible things and are afraid those are coming to light, or the lies are coming to light, right? Why did the Soviets and why did the government in Eastern Germany censor the press and basically told the press what to do, and you couldn't have free press and you couldn't have free election? Because the people's lives was horrible. And they knew if they actually had free elections, like they had at some point, and then the whole fucking thing fell apart. Because they knew they were doing horrible things to people and they were making their lives miserable because Marx had some ideas back in the day. They knew they were doing shit. Like if you are a progressive left-leaning person and you think you're right, why do you want to outlaw people saying the wrong thing? I mean, you are in the best position to prove that you're right. If what you're saying is a fact, like it's way easier for you to prove that than for somebody who made something up. I've never understood this. The same thing with like climate change. Like, why do the people who are completely sure that 98% of all scientists agree?
98% of all scientists agree.
Why do they are so afraid of people saying something else? I don't get that thinking. Like if you think you're right, why are you so afraid? Why are you so fucking afraid that you need to legislate all of this? I've never understood this. And if you actually understand propaganda, if you're gonna read up, I got a book somewhere. If you're gonna start reading up and you start reading Bernays, and you start reading about propaganda, then you learn that like banning your fucking fake news is not going to get you anywhere, because real good propaganda, like real good advertising, doesn't even work like that. You don't actually, if you can do it, like if you're not dumb as Trump, you actually don't say something that's wrong, that's provably wrong. You just say something that's misleading. And you work with emotions. That's like how ads work. Like, have these people never seen ads? Do these people actually think that drinking Coca-Cola makes their life better? Do they think that driving a BMW will make them successful? Do they think that that the whole goal of the whole Levi's company now is to make the planet better with sustainable clothes? Do these people actually believe this? I don't. That's how it works. That's how ads work. That's how a good press release works. You just say. You don't lie. You don't say untruth. You just don't say the thing you don't want people to notice. You say something else, and you use emotions and flashy graphics and videos and plinky plonky Apple music, and you distract them from that. Right? That's what Microsoft did. We talked about this. That's how the whole solar flare thing worked. Right? They didn't say it wasn't our fault. They didn't say Exchange server wasn't the problem. No, they just guided the discussion and guided the press, who's too dumb to figure it out these days, to tell everybody that it's Solarflare's fault and not actually Microsoft and their fucking Office 365 that started everything. Right? That's how you do it. That's how you do PR. That's how you do propaganda. It's the same thing. I mean, there is the there is the blunt approach that Goebbels learned from Bernays, where basically the other way, if you're the state, the other way to do propaganda is just you say something that's wrong, it's untrue, and you just say that over and over and over again. You can do that. That also works. But generally, you don't even have to do that if you're controlling what people can publish, right? You're just gonna, if you're the one who are deciding what's the truth and what's fake news, then you're just publishing what you think, and you just, everybody who criticizes you, that's fake news, and that just gets deleted off Facebook or whatever. Yeah. I could use an alcohol-resistant liver. Well, couldn't anybody. I mean, I wish I was drinking. I'm drinking coffee right now. So I want to bring up another example. I was reading the Verfassungsblog, which is a German blog about constitutions. And this is a guy called Dr. Lasse Schult, and he's writing in English because this is about Southeast Asia. He's basically writing about, this was in 2019, I think he was writing about the hate speech laws the fake news laws, sorry. I'm confusing this already. It's basically the same thing. They were talking about in Malaysia, Singapore, and in Thailand, right? And he says, Countess government statements do not distinguish between acceptable and unacceptable falsehood, but rather refer to the problem of, quote, fake news in general terms. Any falsehood thus becomes potentially harmful. Though mankind has managed to deal with lies and misinformation for thousands of years, a regional consensus is emerging, I think it's a global consensus by now, according to which a, quote, meaningful exercise of free speech, unquote, in a, quote, properly functioning marketplace of ideas, unquote, is not guaranteed anymore without the filtering of state-regulated traditional media. The state's trust in corrective mechanisms is dwindling. Yeah, I think everybody's trust is. With the problem. Falsehoods themselves are becoming a political and legal issue. This heightened governmental attention is largely attributable to the rise of social media, particularly in Southeast Asia. I don't think he's right. I think it's attributable to the understanding of these politicians of social media. Or they're not understanding the phenomenon, which it's just a different medium, right? It's just like it's like writing going from a newspaper to the web. It's just more accessible, but it's still the same writing. But it is also sustained and amplified by governmental framing and discursive superiority. Restrictions of constitutional rights are likely to be justified on this ground to an increasing extent. The balance between free speech and the fight against, quote, fake news is expected to tilt in favor of the eradication of falsehoods. Governmental language of, quote, war affects the balancing of rights and interests, particularly where public discourse is dominated by state actors. In these hegemonic settings, the government's continued emphasis on, quote, fake news can be expected to shift legal interpretations and education towards the emancipation of truth as a public interest. The floating signifier becomes a Claudian nodal point, whatever that He just had to throw something in to show he's a professor. I think he's right with this. He's just he's missing the point, because, or maybe he isn't, but he's not saying it clearly, because he's saying, the emancipation of truth. But the point is, what is truth? And also, I think what he's missing is if this is true, then there's a shifting of decision of who makes the decision of what a falsehood is, which in a self-correcting system, as for example, the German democracy was originally designed, was formerly in the public arena, i.e., it was down to the press, and we're now shifting that to the state. I think the real issue here is that the press is not doing its job. That is the actual problem. The problem is not how social media changed the discourse. The problem is not how, the thing Mike said a few times, to bring him up again, how these falsehoods spread easier on social media. That's not the point. The point is that the press is not doing its job. The press is our society is becoming very polarized, and the press is also becoming very polarized, right? You're either on the side of Trump or you're not. And that happens everywhere. So we can't kind of leave it up to the press, because the press might be on the side of the government, and then we're fucked. As it was, what I kind of post the questions in the show notes, privatecitizen.press, where you will find all my thoughts and all the links I've talked about. What if the US, right, had deemed, what if these fake news legislation that largely the Democrats want to put in were in place when Snowden happened? What if the state, who has an interest in not getting these revelations going out, what if the press had just deemed that fake news and deleted all links to stories of that from social media, and it couldn't have spread? Right? And that's not a far-fetched thing, because the thing Snowden was reporting on was stuff that a democratic state was doing in the interest of its citizens, allegedly. I mean, the NSA is a governmental institution of the federal government of the United States. So presumably somebody, the president, I'm pretty sure the president's concerned knew about this, right? And somebody deemed this okay. So the government was okay with this. The government was doing this, right? But we need a counterpoint. We need the press or somebody, if maybe it's not the press anymore. Maybe it's new media, new rules, which is kind of my slogan. Maybe it's the fucking podcasters now.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster.
Maybe the fucking podcasters are the only people who are doing this now, and then that becomes the press. But it's a problem if you're moving this. You can't have the government who decide. You can't have the press decide. They can't fucking do it. You can't have the government decide it, because the government is, of course, biased in its right? The government is running an intelligence service. The government thinks running an intelligence service is a good thing. The government thinks this is right, but the majority of the citizens might not. So if somebody now figures this out, it doesn't have to be the press. It could be private citizens. You could be doing this. You could be writing a blog. You could be the new Snowden. You could get the story out, right? What happens if the government decides this is fake news? And people will be like, oh, but it's that's really far-fetched, because obviously Snowden was true. No, it was Snowden got his hands on some PowerPoint presentations, right? You could have completely framed that as oh, it's just PowerPoint present. Oh, it's Russian misinformation. That's they fucking ignored the Biden fucking laptop. You can fucking do anything if you want, if you really want to, and you have the press on your side. And the real problem, that's always the issue I have with the press, is in Germany now, the press is kind of the press always self-congratulating itself, which is what I hate about journalists. So I got for example, I'm part of the German, my labor organization, my industry organization, Deutscher Journalistenverein, DJV. And they had like this thing now because it was like Freedom of the Press Day. And they're like, we need to have a panel discussion, and like Germany slipped like on to 13 in like the Freedom of the Press Index. And they're like, this is because of attacks on the press, right? Because the public is saying the press is not trustworthy anymore, and they're kind of attacking the journalists. Fucking hate this. The journalists are like, you like write for Der Spiegel, right? You have the biggest platform you can literally have. You're obviously ego driven. You want people to read what you're writing, and you're doing that, and then people are giving like are not agreeing with you, and they're writing you letters. Oh, you fucking bitch! What are you doing? You go do like a hate poetry slam. Be like, oh, look what people are saying on me on Twitter. You went on like the fucking biggest stage there is, and you're surprised that some people are fucking throwing tomatoes. Like, what the fuck? What? That's part of your job. Of course, some people will not like it, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's like all the fucking public attack." Like, if they had any sense, if I would have been on that panel discussion, they would never have me. But if I would have been on that panel, I would have said, "Hello, you know what the problem is? You know why people are not trusting you? Because you're writing shit, right? Because the website of the German public broadcaster, the biggest news organization in Germany, most trusted news organization, were for 2 weeks referring to this fucking virus as a DNA virus. Right? When any fucking high school student with fucking high school biology, like, they can take your fucking stories apart because you're not fucking researching this correctly. And that's not the only topic. Like, anything you write, like, you're idiotic. Like, you're writing a story about, I don't know, we have to have like speed limit of 120 on the German Autobahn because that's gonna fucking save the planet. Meanwhile, you're ignoring heavy industry. Like, your stories have holes all over the place. And the problem is not that the internet is horrible. No, the internet enables people, like people listening to my podcast, to fucking go and do the research themselves if they have 5 minutes at work. And, you know, they have usually they would be playing like a mobile game, but they can just go and do the fucking research you didn't do, and then figure out you just fucking didn't do your research, and then you have like pie on your face. That's why people don't trust you, right? And I know this. I worked in a technical field. I had these fucking people ask me about hacker attacks, and like the most ridiculous, they just fucking believe when the government says, like, one day after the hacker attack, they go like, it was the fucking Russians. You go like, how do you know? How would you, there's no technical way you would know this. Well, later we figured out it was probably spies, whatever. But like, you're not asking like the most easiest, like, you get told that by government representative at a press conference, and you go, all right, I'm going to write that into my story. You're not going, how do you know this? How do you know this? Because you go like, oh, it's technical information. I don't know anything about it. Just fucking write it down and ask somebody. Ask me. But like, ask the fucking question. They're not even asking the fucking the easy, like, any of you, if you were sitting in that press conference, you would have like asked that question. You're only half aware. They're not fucking doing this. Of course, people are not trusting them. Of course, people are not trusting the Spiegel because they had fucking Relotius on their staff who just made up every fucking thing he wrote for years. Journalists. It's fucking scum of the earth. I'm telling you. I'm just like, they're fuck. Anyway, that's the problem. And you can't have those people do the fact checks because they can't fucking even write the fucking story in the first place. Because they're morons. They went to J school and learned all these high-flying shit about journalism. They didn't learn how to ask the most simple question that anybody knows. Oh my god! If something happens, like a new virus, and you have no idea, ask somebody who knows, and then ask two people. Just don't ask one. Ask the other guy who wrote the other paper, and then think a little bit. It's not that hard. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes. But like, fucking try to think critically. Why can't these people do this? I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. Anyway, rant. Big rant. Need more coffee. I'm sorry about this. If you don't like rants, This is not the show for you. What the fuck? The way I see this going is people curate their own news stream, says Harry Vatan. I think that's a very good idea. The problem is a lot of work, right? No, the way I see this is actually, I think stuff like Substack, where we need to get to a point where you just like, I don't know if this works for the general public, but like, you pick, like, you go like, oh, Glenn Greenwald. I know who that guy is. I know where he comes from. I know what his expertise is. And I know what his bent is, right? It's like my bent. He's not going on about Trump because that's not his niche. He's going on about the other side. But then you can pay for his stuff, and then you get a fucking guy from the Times, and you get the other bent, and then you read both, and then you think a bit. I think what we need to get to is just people need to think a little bit. They just can't go like as a consumer of media, you just can't go okay, I'm just gonna I want to get on with my work. And I think that's what the problem is with what I just had in my analysis, like with these well-meaning people, left-leaning people. They're like, I understand, they need to get their work, they need to get their job done, they have kids, they can't just fucking be on the internet and research all the time. So they're like, I'm just gonna believe what they say. I'm just gonna read the paper, and they're gonna be wrong. They're gonna be right. And like if in doubt, I'm just gonna go left because the left politicians, they're gonna figure this out, right? That we can't do that anymore. We need to fucking think for ourselves. Otherwise, I know this is all going to hell because nobody's gonna do that. But hey, I do like that we just had, so I said people don't enjoy these rants, maybe. Twitch chat's proving me wrong. I have like this channel point rewards for rant, and Green Turtle just said, keep it going, the rant, and then Redeemer said, dealer's choice rant. Well, I'm trying to keep it, like, it's like, I don't, like, it's not a solution. You can't do that. I mean, we can do this. We listen to this podcast, but general people can't do that. So I don't know what the fucking solution is. I know that making this legislation is not the fucking solution, right? It's not the fucking solution. Think about the next government. You don't want the next Trump to have to be able to determine what you can say on social media, right? Would you trust, if you're like, your progressive left-leaning friend, you can ask them, like, would you trust, like, a democracy like Russia or Turkey to have this power? Like, would you trust Erdogan or Putin, to act in the interest of, like, the people in the democracy with this power? And they would probably say no. So why would the German government have that? Like, what makes you think the next guy after Angela Merkel is fucking better? Like, I fucking don't even like Merkel. She's like sitting on her hands on all the time. Is making this all she's doing now is just like tightening all the fucking rules instead of like fucking legislating them to fucking fix the healthcare system, right? Why are they not doing that? We had that rant before. Why are they not doing that? I need to turn these Twitch redemptions off for the podcast because now I can't curse for 10 minutes. Because now that got redeemed. I probably got redeemed while I was cursing. So, but I'm gonna. No, I can't curse. No, wait, I need to set a stopwatch. Isn't it amazing if you do a podcast on Twitch and you make all these rules for yourself? I can recommend it. It's hilarious, right? Yeah, just imagine the type of government depicted in V for Vendetta, says Mozart. It's yeah, I like, the only thing I can think is that these people who advocate for this have not thought it through completely. They have not compared what's the worst case, right? What's the worst case with this manipulation on social media and like the Russian bots and whatever Putin wants to do to manipulate the election. Yes, let's let that be a given, right? we'll have that. And is that really worse than opening this legislative dumpster fire of having people try to decide what is true, what is hate speech, and I'm railing against this out of a idealistic thing. Like, it's not even for me. I mean, I think these things that are going on right now are stupid. These witch hunts, the cancel culture, whatever. But that could be like your opinion. But I'm just thinking, think about all of this, and think about the opposite case. You always have to think about, right now, it's people that believe the same thing that you are doing, like that you're believing, and they are forcing this on the opposite side. Now imagine the roles reversed. Imagine a landslide victory of the other people who live in your country who are massively annoyed by all this shit. Oh God, I said shit. That's swearing right now. I have to reset the timer. Who are massively annoyed by this, and they vote somebody to power, and these laws are not going away. It's like the people who are saying, well, the curfews and all these rules are just temporary, and this virus is gonna go away. Maybe. What happens? They have this incident. I don't even know if you have that in any other. But in Germany, they came up with this Inzidenzwert. So that's the thing when I've heard it the first time in the subway.
Dear passengers, Düsseldorf currently exceeds the threshold level for spreading the coronavirus.
They call it the threshold level in English, the Inzidenzwert. It's just like it's a random number. It's not a scientific. It's like, what is it? It's infections per 100,000 inhabitants. It's not epidemiologically valid. Somebody just pulled it out of their behind. Literally, it's just like, it's a number, but it's prime propaganda. It's become the thing everything's decided by. Like, I have scientist friends. They're like, the incidence is going down. It's going to get better. Oh, no, it's going up. It's like, what does that even mean? It's just a number, right? They could change the numbers. They could okay, just have even lower numbers, still have lockdowns. If somebody wanted, still have to have lockdowns. This law, the Infektionsschutzgesetz has there's this list of viruses that are mandatory to be reported. They just have to put influenza in there, and then if they started tomorrow to do PCR tests about influenza infections, which we have never done, who knows what the incidence, the threshold number is going to be? Who knows? Like, either you could think of all kind of just bureaucratic things you could do if you were malicious and you were in power and you wanted to have this emergency rule extended. And that's exactly what despots do. I'm not saying Merkel is a despot, but that is a prime autocratic. That's like the number one rule in the autocratic handbook: create a state of emergency and then keep it going. And you're just giving them these tools. You're putting them into law. You're curtailing freedom of speech. You're curtailing my protections of the police not being able to come into my flat and just confiscate everything I have here. You're curtailing all this shit. And now imagine the fucking people. This is really not going well, is it? Right, another 10 minutes. Now imagine the people you're afraid of on the right get into power. And it's not even that far-fetched. In Germany right now, I don't know what the election's going to bring in September. It could be, a lot of people are saying it's going to be a complete green victory. I don't think so. I think it's going to be, conservative green government. But, it could be the AfD. Could be the party everybody's afraid of. Like the new right, whatever. And then we have all these laws on the book. Great. That's going to be good. Don't do it. This is not a good idea. just to wrap this up, it's not a good idea. We don't want to legislate this. We don't want to get into discussions where somebody has to figure out what actually is true and what is not, because we can't. I referred to you the episode 64 of this podcast, The Problem with Facts. If you want to read more, I mentioned Glenn Greenwald. He has a great article called ACLU. Again, it's Greenwald. He knows what he's doing. He's found his niche and he's pushing it. ACLU again cowardly abstains from an online censorship controversy. This time over BLM, Black Lives Matters, because it's a lot of stuff. But basically, somebody found out that the big overarching Black Lives Matters organization, the person who leads it, who calls herself a Marxist, spent like millions of dollars on houses all across the US for herself. And then they wrote a story of this tabloid, I think the Post, probably the one with the Biden laptop. And, they got it like under whatever. Facebook went, our terms of service don't allow anybody, like if they don't want their address to publish or what house they bought, like they completely shut like completely valid journalism down. Just like that. And they don't even have this legislation right now. It's just in the Facebook terms of service. Like you just willy-nilly shutting journalism down. And you've never done this before, right? Tabloids have been writing about who bought what house for ages, right? It's not like Notch could like complain that they published that he bought like the damn GTA. That's I don't count that as swearing, by the way. The GTA mansion or whatever, like But now suddenly, because like this is a person from your camp, right? This is how it's gonna be. This is how it's gonna be decided. The people who are currently on the float up the top, running things, and their guys who the mainstream is sympathetic to, they're gonna be the ones deciding what's okay to publish and whatnot. And currently it's the left. Currently it's the progressive guys. But what happens if it's going to be the right guys? That's the thing we need to think about before we make laws like this. So don't make laws like this. Anyway, I hope that's enough rants for you. I am now going to move over to the feedback because we had some interesting feedback. I don't think readership is why they are self-censoring those, says Mode 7. I think it has to do with their business models. I don't know. Depends. Probably. It's also, it's advertisers and stuff like that. But, the effect is the same, isn't it? Anyway, if you disagree with a lot of the stuff, a little of the stuff, something I've said, go to privatecitizen.press. I value feedback of all kinds. There's a link up the top, contact. There's a link to an anonymous whistleblower form, which actually somebody used. So when I say anonymous, I've no way I can figure that out. No idea where they are. First off, we had Barry Williams. We also have a matrix room for the podcast. Really, really cool. I just wanted to quickly mention and got some really nice background info on like vaccinations and the different cards and stuff they have in different countries. Very useful. Not something, for the show, but it's very cool that people are chiming in and posting pictures of their things, so their certificates. And it's very useful as like background information for this kind of stuff. So there's some producers in there sharing information, and we're having discussions, which is pretty cool. So if you have a Matrix account, you can go there. You can also just go to matrix.org. Like if you click on the link, if you don't have a Matrix account, it actually should tell you how to create one. Then you can take part. It's pretty cool. Anyway, Barry Williams, this was on the Discord server, was continuing the discussion we had last episode, and I think the episode before, about like atheism and agnosticism. And he was clarifying, he's saying that I misunderstood him, and he says he was arguing that I am an atheist. I think I understood you, Barry. I think I didn't misunderstand you. I just don't agree. Because I'm not an atheist. An atheist is actually somebody who says God doesn't exist. I don't know. I don't care. Like I'm an agnostic. I came to this understanding in my studies. I don't care. I literally do not care. It's not something I think is important. I think the laws we're making are important. I think thinking about the great the things in history, the double standards, and how certain things are seen, like what's the historic truth, thinking about things like that. That's important. If there's God and there's heaven, I'm gonna go to hell, and there's nothing I can do about that. This is gonna happen. And then I'm gonna have some nice talks, some very interesting talks with Stalin. I'm gonna ask him about. I'm gonna get him and Hitler together, and I'm gonna ask them what really went on, because there's gonna be some interesting discussions down there, I think. Yeah. Oh, Mode 7 was actually responding to somebody in chat. Yes, I'm seeing the post. I was confused. What did Super User say? The question is, what is leading journalists to self-censor, and how can we train them out of it? Can Fab be an ambassador for anti-censorship in the journalistic circle? I don't think I can be anything. I don't. Probably, yeah. It's probably. I don't. I think it is their readership. It's also, if there's no law against it, like, what if the readership is receptive? I think it's perceived readership. It's a like, it's kind of like, if you think about video games journalism, right? When we had like the Gamergate thing, and some of the journalists went like on this, like this Kotaku and all these other publications that went on this like gamers are dead thing, right? At that point, probably a lot of the gamers who were offended by that just left, and then the other people that were left had like this self-reinforcing like comment thing where they were like really liked what band they were doing, like, I don't know, what's the 5 best video games for gender queer self-affirmation or whatever articles they're writing, and then you get like this spiral going. You get an audience, your audience shifts, and then you cater to that. I mean, that's one of the things. Other things is a lot of journalists just believe that stuff. I think this is their opinion. I think when I'm saying like this left progressive thing, it's very educated people. These are the people who are journalists. They're not very many progressive journalists I know. Classical like conservative journalists, like right-wing journalists. And then you get like, because there's more left-leaning journalists, they tend to hound on the other journalists, and they get like kicked off of publications and stuff like that. It's just like, I think lots of people believe in this direction, and they're not really consciously self-censoring. They're more like, they actually have this opinion, and they cultivate this leadership, this readership of people who also have this opinion, and then they just ignore the other people and lump them in with their hate comments, right? They're just all like, oh yeah, I did those people. At least that's my experience with people I talked about and where I worked, when I, clashed with people who held these very traditional kind of left-leaning opinion, who they actually pro censorship on social networks. I'm like, you're journalist. How can you be pro censorship anything? Your job is literally to find information, and it's easier if people are allowed to share that. If like, what? That's like you're a car mechanic and you want laws against publishing like handbooks about cars. You're like, I don't want no. We need to outlaw the car manufacturers to actually tell us how to fix these cars. It's just a lot more fun if we just blindly bumble around. Like, I don't get this. Oh, here you go. I can fucking swear again. That's a relief. Maybe groupthink and cancel. I think a lot of it is groupthink. I think it's a self reinforcing thing where, yes, you have, and I've met them, you have journalists that disagree with that, but like they're not in the leadership positions. They just keep their head down and just like, I don't want to get into politics. I just want to do my job. I don't know what it is. I think the problem's gonna solve itself because the in some way because the big publications are gonna go down, because for the longest time they just held on to like advertising and tracking their users and the old model of making money, and they're not realizing the new model, which I think is value for value. I think it's having your readership pay you directly, or whatever the new model is going to be. I think it's going to be more smaller publications. I think the big ones are going to go down. I mean, they're always going to be big ones, but I think in general, and I think the people actually have more right-leaning or more conservative tendencies. They're opening publications, and we're gonna. I think they're also fighting against this. This is also why a lot of the left-leaning people want this censorship, because they don't want to hear from these right-leaning people. They don't want to hear from their like rivals in the public discourse, basically. But I think it's gonna get better. I don't think to say it with Firefly, I don't think they can stop the signal. Yeah, actually, Superhero is a good point. Less people from rural and traditional communities go into journalism. It means journalism becomes more monocultural. Yeah, it's generally you go to university, right? And universities in, I don't know, but like especially in Germany, and I think to a large degree in large parts of the US also, they're currently, the professors who teach this kind of stuff are rather left-leaning. And that might be a generational thing. There might be people coming up. I believe in the younger generation. I'm not a person who says, young people are all dumb, as much as I rag against Zoomers and millennials. I think people are gonna. It goes in circles, right? People are gonna grow up with this cancel culture shit. They're gonna think this is dumb. This is a mistake, and it's gonna be rolled back. There's gonna be people who rail against this. It's like how you saw, like, you had World War II, and then you had this generation of like very strict, autocratic, almost like leaning people, and their kids grew into the hippies, right? They're like, their kids were my parents' generation, the 68 generation, and you had them, and then it now we're on that wave for some, and it's gonna turn around again. I think everybody rebels against their parents, so it just goes in circles. I think it's gonna change. I think we just gotta have to be careful not to like pass too many of these stupid laws right now. But anyway, back to the feedback. So yeah, I kind of disagree with Barry. I think I understood that he was saying I was an atheist. I think I'm not an atheist. I'm pretty much an agnostic. I also don't care. I don't think it's an important. I think religion, that's one of my very unconservative things. For example, I'm very pro women having control of their bodies. I'm absolutely pro abortion. I don't think any man should say anything about that. I think you just shut the fuck up until you've had a baby. And I am completely like. I think, like, if it was after me, I would just like fucking outlaw religion. It's caused so much trouble in the history of mankind. I think it's a huge problem. Well, not outlaw. I think, as I said, it's like kink. I don't want to know, right? I don't want to know what religion you are. I don't want your fucking church bells to ring. Just do whatever you want to do. Just go have your little dungeon in your basement. I don't care if you chain people up there or if you preach from this dumb fucking book. I don't care. Anyway, Captain Egghead, also in regards to the previous episode, said, I said at the end, my new motto, Vala Morgulis. The problem with Vala Morgulis, which means all men must die, is that with the standard response, Vala do Harris, the message seems incompatible with the spirit of this show. Vala do Harris, of course, the classical response meaning all men must serve. Anyone knows how to say aim to misbehave in High Valyrian. And then he responds to himself, this was in Discord, maybe, while you're guessing about conjugations, Vala Vibilis, every man must fight, or Vala der Eris, every man must liberate. You can find anything on the net these days. You can. Actually, I do like Vala Morgulis, and I do like the response Vala to Harris, because I think Vala Morgulis does say something that is true, but that we don't want to be true. That's exactly the point, right? The point is all men must die, even if we like it or not. Like, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter if we have a total health welfare state, all men must die. And the response being all men must serve is also true. We all serve somebody. I think we can minimize it, and I think probably if you listen to this podcast, you're working very hard at minimizing it. I certainly did. That's why I quit my job, because I don't want to serve anybody but myself. But you're always serving somebody. You always have a government. There's always the police that tells you in certain, which isn't bad. That has to happen to some degree for our society to work. There can never be complete freedom. As much as I like to be a libertarian, and as I like freedoms, I understand that there can't be total freedom. We must have laws, we must have rules. I'm just fighting to minimize it, but at the same time, if you're telling yourself that you don't serve any master, you are wrong. I mean, chances are you have a job and you're working for somebody. Maybe you're not, and you're lucky and you got yourself out of there, but like for most people, that will be the reality. You might be married and you might be serving your wife or your husband, serving as in widely interpreted. But I think it still fits. I think that's it just reminds you of the things you don't want to you be true, but that you needed to be reminded of. So yes, Vala Morgulis. And you can say Vala de Harris. I like, don't they in the show, is it Danny who says whereby I'm not a man? Because obviously all men must serve. I have no idea how they translated this into other languages. Man, I'm just watching Game of Thrones for the first time, and that show is wildly overrated. How everybody goes here's a little bonus rant for you. You know how everybody goes but it's such a good show, and then they ruined it in the last seasons. Without even having seen the last season, I'm in season 4 now. I'm actually our Blu-ray set, which I got from my parents, is in French for some reason, because my dad ordered it in French. So it's Le Trône de Fer. The Iron Throne. Le Trône de Fer. There is so shit in some respects. The CGI is really shit. In the first season, when they have actual dogs as wolves, and in season 2 they're CGI wolves. You're what the fuck? And then I watched this. Oh god, the last episode we watched is Jon Snow is fighting the bad guy from what's his face? The bad guy from the one season of The Expanse. What's his name again? What's the guy? Was it season 4? I have to look this up. Murtry, yes, right. He's fighting the Murtry. Awesome actor. Bern Gorman, awesome actor, great guy. Total, his face is he's a fucking mass murderer. He looks like fucking mass murderer. So he fights him, right? It's a one-on-one duel. It's Jon Snow fighting that guy, and he's badass street fighter. From the he has 2 daggers, and Jon Snow has a long sword. And this guy manages to hurt Jon Snow multiple times during this fight. It's the worst fight choreography. I don't know much about fighting, but I know one thing. If you have range, you generally win. If there's a guy with a long sword and you have a spear, most of the time you win. If there's a guy who has 2 daggers, right? He's got 2 daggers, and you have a long sword, you have to be really, really fucking retarded. I'm going to say this now, just to annoy people. Fucking retarded to let him hurt you. You can just have that sword, and have a sword length, and just hurt him by pointing at him. He has no way. You're in an open room, right? There's no people. He can't fucking surround you. He has no way to get close enough with the fucking daggers if he just can't throw them or has any other tricks up his sleeve, which this guy doesn't have. You can't hurt and the whole fight choreography is just written. You can see it, so that somehow Jon Snow moves his sword like really badly, so that it's like in a really weird angle, so that the guy can just dart in and like punch him like with the dagger. And you're like, who wrote? Like, if I was a director on that show, I would say, okay, guys, who was responsible for writing this fight choreography? Okay, you come here, you get these 2 daggers, the actual daggers, they're sharp. I get a long sword, and we'll have a fight, right? And you show me how you can hurt me. Right, you can actually I use the sharp sword and you use the sharp daggers, and we're gonna have a right here. You're gonna show me how you hurt me, and I've never handled a sword in my life. I can fucking take that guy. I just like with the sword the whole time, just like hold him at like long sword length. I mean, he comes in with his dagger, you could just chop his head off. It's a fucking sword. It's not hard. The head's right there. It's so bad. I mean, there's some scenes in the show. I mean, other things are great. Nikolai Coster-Waldau is one of the sexiest men alive. That man is so hot. So good. Of course, what's his face? Lone Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, or like the Americans like to say, Peter Dinklage. It's a town in Germany. I think that's probably where his family's from. I like to call him Peter Dinklage. He's obviously amazing. What I like about this show is, like, you know how, like, on... anyway, I'm going to stop the show in a bit. But, like, you know how, like, in TV shows, the credits are generally either they're alphabetic or they're, like, in order of, like, kind of importance. So you can tell that the first guy gets the most money. I like how Peter Dinklage in, like, season 1 and 2 probably, it's, like, all the way at the back, like, got $5. And then season 3 is, like, the first guy in the credits. And you can tell I have no idea what happened, but I'm pretty sure he went like, I don't want to do this show anymore. They're like, but we really need it. No. I want 5 million in the episode. They're like, no, we're not going to give it to you. He's like, okay, good luck with finding another, like, really small person who can play this role as good as I am. Like, good luck. There's like 3 actors of my size in Hollywood. I know all of them. They're not going to fuck with me. Just good on Peter Dinklage. Oh, man. So good. Yeah, and of course, the guy who plays Baelish. I just fucking love Baelish. That would be me. That would be me in Game of Thrones. He's amazing. Peter Dinklage is Robert Downey Jr. in the Game of Thrones universe. Yeah, he is kind of is, right? He's badass. Robert Downey Jr., I just like him because he's in my favorite. In Australia, when I was in Australia, we watched Richard III by Ian McKellen. And Robert Downey Jr. has like he's just drugged off his face. That's like his role. He plays like the American relation. He's so good in that. If you haven't seen Richard III by Ian McKellen, watch that movie. It's kind of like Richard III, the play with the actual real dialogue, like the Shakespearean dialogue, set in like a like fascist kind of thing. Like he's actually a fascist. They drive with a tank through a chimney, like in the beginning. It's so good, especially the ending. My horse, my kingdom for a horse. Let's do this pell-mell. If not in heaven, then hand in hand in hell. Oh God, I love this play. The best play ever. Anyway, I'm just dragging it. I don't know what's going on with me today. I'm sorry if you're suffering through this on the podcast. It's bonus content. Anyway, we have a last comment. An anonymous producer who comments on my episode on the scientific method, which was episode 63. They say, I have literally no idea who they are. They say, first of all, thank you for your Private Citizen podcast. It has been an interesting year to put a couple of events in perspective. I sometimes disagree with you. Good on you. For example, I don't share your views on net neutrality, and I've worked for several ISPs, although not directly employed by them. By the way, if you're inclined to just write to me again, please also anonymously if you want to. I would be interested in you just sharing your viewpoint on that. Might be interesting. Might do an episode on net neutrality at some point because people want that. But the thing that bothers me most is when I listen to the show, is your sometimes naive-sounding evocation of science. Please read in all caps words with your usual outburst tone. Sorry, your naive-sounding invocation of science, as if the scientific method was flawless. Don't forget that science needs money and can not be neutral or indisputable. I know from listening to you that you are aware, but sometimes you really sound too idealist. And me, holy shit. That's when I tend to be skeptical about the points you make. Okay, I think I tried very hard in the scientific method episode to explicitly point out that science is explicitly not flawless. I think with the money thing, it might be a question of where I'm coming from, because, in Germany, we usually historically considered science to be something that should be paid for by the state, which I still believe. I think it should be paid for by taxpayer money. I did the science I did because I did humanities, history, politics. That is not sponsored by some farmer company. That's always taxpayer money, like foundations, and so basically rich people giving money to like a historic foundation or taxpayer money. I think that's how all science should be funded exclusively. I think that's how natural sciences should be funded. I know many biologists, people working in the medical field, who also believe this. But I also know from very personal experience that pretty much any scientific stuff, especially in the medical field, like any studies have sponsors, have commercial sponsors, but actually generally that has little to no impact. I know that there's corruption and that there is fishy stuff going on, and that you can basically buy studies, but I think that is very much the exception. I don't think science is as much beholden to like cooperation and funding like that, like people think. I mean, there's very good historic examples, tobacco companies funding research, and then basically figuring out that, cigarettes are actually not that harmful, stuff like that. But I think in general, the system is working incredibly well for how much beholden to corporate money it is. Nonetheless, I think we should get away from that. I think this is something the state should fund. I think the state can fund this. I do not understand how we can pay billions of euros, euro dollars, to bail out banks and insurance companies. Who fucking needs insurance? Nobody likes and I know people who work for insurance companies. Nobody fucking likes insurance companies, even if you work for them, right? It's a paycheck. But you're not like, oh, insurance companies, they save people's lives. Fucking insurance companies. Superuser says, I work for an insurance company. Man, you do, whatever. But it's like, I think you wouldn't be going on saying like, they save. Anyway, why are we talking about insurance companies? We shouldn't be bailing companies out, and we could put that money into just paying for research. Right? Why are we not, like, why is that not the response to the pandemic? We're like, okay, we got like we might disagree how bad it is, but I'll agree with your worst case. The pandemic is the worst thing that happened to us in the last 100 years. We were unprepared. And the fucking people who did research on this were unprepared. Like fucking Drosten with his fucking podcast, who like fucking has been researching this virus for like 12 years or whatever. Like, he didn't see this coming. Like, there was no fucking rush to like solve this problem. This virus might actually get us in trouble at some point, or like a version of this. Like, because we were looking at SARS for like 12 years or whatever. Like, these people are fucking asleep at the wheel. So we need to reform this. We need to actually now go and say, okay, right, we as a state, we get like, our economy got destroyed, our social systems are getting destroyed, our healthcare systems getting destroyed. We need to reform the healthcare system to be ready to cope with this, and we need to reform science. We need to pay for this research, right? We need to pay these epidemiologists and the virologists so that we not get caught like flat-footed the next time someone eats a bat. It's why is that not the response? I don't get this. I think we could do this. I actually think science could be more independent. and science is a great, like, education. Science, that is something that the state should fund. And with Germany, like in my case, the country I live in, we're like always, we're foremost and we're inventing all this shit, man. We need good education. We need good education. We need good infrastructure, and we need like fucking science so we can come up with new things that we can sell in the future. Like, why is the state not sponsoring that? Like, what are we doing? What are you guys doing? It's like, it's such a no-brainer. But anyway, I didn't want to make out that science is completely independent, and of course science needs money. But I think we should explore other avenues. The money Germany alone spent on this, on the vaccination program. You know how many biolabs and postdocs and professorships you could have, like, fucking research papers you could have paid for that. Scientific publishing, we talked about that. That needs to get fucking reformed. You can't have, like, publishing companies making money. We talked about this on the show, prompted by listeners, right? We can't have them make, like, money left and right and again, and everybody's paying for subscription like 3 times. Meanwhile, the fucking taxpayer money, the research that is all based on taxpayer money, and like everybody's paying, like, and they're ripping everybody off. Just outlaw fucking scientific publishing. We can do anything in this country now. We can discriminate against people about the, like, fucking antibodies they have in their blood. Something that I always thought was unbelievable, like, under the Constitution, like, you couldn't do, but apparently you can do that. You can fucking lock down the border all of a sudden. You can do all these things. You can prevent people from going out. I'm not allowed to go out right now. It's after 10. If I go out, it's like I get fucking arrested or something. Like, why can't we fucking outlaw these fucking parasites who make money on, like, basic research? There's not something anybody should make money on. That is like a function we need for society. Like, why do people who run hospitals make money? Hospitals are not there they're not companies. They're not there to make money. They're there to fucking heal people. Right? Nobody says the fucking army needs to all of a sudden make money. Right? That's the thing we have. Like, the police doesn't need to make money. They're just like, they're there. They're public service. The hospitals are fucking, the fire brigade doesn't need to, they don't have advertising on their cars. Like, what the hell? What are we doing? Do those meter maids arrest you, or do they call I don't know, actually. The meter maids are not allowed to arrest me, the Ordnungsamt. So I guess they would have to call the police. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't think they arrest you. They just fine you or something. No military contractors make the money. Yeah, it's true. Good point. Or the Stasi. No, we don't. Well, I don't know. We don't have that yet, but it's seems like it's coming back. Anyway, that's it for now. Let's wrap up this show. Thank everybody, and tell people about the value for value model, which keeps the lights on, and something very close to my heart, and probably people on the No Agenda stream listening to this. I mean, they had a lot of rants. Think about and getting your money's worth. So I'm gonna explain what that is now. That was an incredibly stupid segue, because if you're listening to this on the No Agenda stream, you know what the value for value model is anyway. But for anybody who doesn't, very quickly, of course, this is free. You can just listen to this. If you like rants, here you go. I'm just saying, I'm a freelance journalist and I don't make a lot of money, and this is kind of, I don't know. I'm spending time on this, and so if you derive any value from it, just think about what that is. And think about giving that back. And there are several ways to do that. You could just PayPal, producers at fab.industries. That's kind of like my fab.industries, my website, my personal website. Or, I have a Patreon, which helps me out because it's kind of like, you sign up for that and it's like a monthly thing. But whatever floats your boat. I'm open to other ways sending me money. I know the No Agenda guys have a really good thing going with checks that people send them, but like I'm in Europe and I literally never cashed a check in my life. I was born in 1983. I think I've seen my dad once pull out his checkbook. Like this was like I don't know. Went to France and they didn't like take a credit card. It was like in the early 90s, I think, and he actually wrote a check. I think I've only seen this once. I don't know how this works, but I'd be willing to figure this out if you want to do that. But anyway, yeah. So that's how it works, and I like to thank everybody because I think that's just fair. Everybody who did this. So first of all, Mode 7, thanks for sending me this amazing hat, and helping me facilitate me there, and and everybody else who made this show possible. Mode 7 is in here 2 more times. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody, who's subscribed on Patreon or sent me money via PayPal. And those people are Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave Shelby Groover, I11G, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Michael Small, IKN, Kai Sears, Fadi Mansour, Bennett Piata, Dirk Didi, Joe Pose, Larry Glock, David Potter, Matt Jellyman, Martin, Mika, Tobias, Mode 7, Dave Amrish, Mr. Amish, Avis, Sandman 616, Drive Zero, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan Edwards, Rizal, Captain Neckhead, D, Cam, No Reply, Rick Bragg, and Ewan Curry. And then I also would like to thank my Twitch subscribers because I stream this on Twitch where I record it, as you will have heard with all the action that was going on earlier with the brands and the no swearing. It's all Twitch stuff. I also stream other stuff, mostly games. I think on Friday I'm going to play some Red Dead Online with friends, where this hat will come in very handy as well. So if you subscribe there, you're also helping out because, that's also giving me some money. So I'd like to thank those people as well. We have Twitch subscribers, Bacon the Pork, Brigadier Sir Nils Olaf. I think it's all one word. It's hard to, but I think that's what that says. Butterbeans, Centurio Apertus, Flash Gordo, Galteran, Indie Gaming X, Mode 7 is unavailable, Mike the Dane, Redeemer, F, and Sandman 616. And I have to thank bytemark.co.uk. They're a British cloud hosting company who are great. And they provide me the servers I use to send you, to host the audio files and, where you get those pro bono, which saves my bacon on this show and everything else I do. So I have to thank them. They are amazing. Oh, God. Super User says, first seen The Big Lebowski writing a check for 80 cents of milk. Yes. Oh, my God. Man. God. Also, when all the police fines go, as for the fighting people. Yeah, they're making a lot of money on this. Actually, there was some press report on this. City of Düsseldorf and the neighboring city was Duisburg is making a lot of money. The Ordnungsamt, they're just raking in the fines. They're very happy about this. So that's it for today. I'll be back next week with another episode. Probably some extra episodes coming up at some point as well. Right, I'm going to play you out with a song called A Space Age Girl Machine by Conditional feat. Bry Oglu. Yeah, I think that's what that name is. Hard to tell sometimes. And of course, the theme song for the show is called Acoustic Roots by Raoul Kabzali, which I've used now for 68 episodes and I love. And that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it gave you something. And I'll see you next week. Until then, always remember, Vala Mogulis. Yes, so that song, as we were just discussing in chat, wait, let me just stop this recording. Here we go. It's from Epidemic Sound. Most of that stuff is also on Spotify. I use it because I'm licensing. God, I can't talk anymore. I'm licensing it. It's obviously, I need a license to play this on Twitch and in YouTube video and also on podcasts. And they have like a thing where you can, it's like a flat license. Pretty cool. Some really good music on there. Well, it's not, it's limited in some ways. It's limited in some genres and stuff like that. But it also has, they have a lot of sound effects. I think it's originally like, it's mostly for people who produce videos. You can use it for anything like ads or whatever you're doing. But it's pretty cool. I can use it on podcasts. I don't subscribe to Spotify. Well, good. Yeah. I'm just, I mean, that's why I don't put a link in the in the show notes. It's basically, I think you'd have to just Google whatever the name is. If you like a song, just Google that. They probably have their own sites. Like often you find it on SoundCloud or whatever, or like what's the CD Baby, or like you'll like there'll be a way to get. These are like independent musicians, right? There'll be a way to get most of that music, and you can just like listen to it on Epidemic Sound. I don't think you can download it if you have a license, but have a look. You can definitely listen to it on all the songs on their site. Right, I'm going to sign off here pretty soon. I'm going to need to stop and get this podcast out and everything. I'm just checking what's going on Twitch, and I see that Ben Burns is only 47 minutes into his 2-hour track challenge. It's pretty cool. He just, if you never... I've used Ben's music for podcasts for a while. I'm subscribed to his Patreon for ages. He just makes music. And this 2-hour track challenge, he does like a song, I think now every week again. And basically, we can listen in. He just sits there and fucking makes like music. This. I don't know how he does it. It's pretty amazing. So I'm gonna rate him now. What happens if we
put like an OTT on?
So that I can
not like crank it or anything.
Basically what I'm doing here with the podcast, and he's doing music, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna rate him. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for keeping me on my toes there with no swearing and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. I love the head very much. I mean, especially that hailstorm today. Like completely convinced me. Like it's like the quality is really good. It's like a Cobra, except I have a lot of those because you can get them, and it's pretty amazing. Also LBJ, I kind of like LBJ, like the look. Anyway, right, let's rate Ben here, and see you around. See you maybe on Friday if you like Red Dead Redemption. I'll be playing that with Khalifa. That'll be fun. So I think 1900. Probably maybe 8 p.m. Central European summertime. And otherwise, maybe see you next week for the next Private Citizen recording. If you are deciding to stay and watch Ben for a bit, say hello from me. Thanks for watching. See you around, everybody.